Hi, I'm Randy Wooden, and welcome to another in our Edge Library series, dealing with job hunters and talking about the good questions to ask an employer during the interview. There are probably hundreds of questions if you really get down to it, and my goal here with this isn't to just spit out a list and say, all right, here are good questions to ask and have a good day. No, that's not it at all. What I want to try to do is to give you not just some of the questions that may be good for you to ask, but also have you understand when to ask them, why to ask them, and what you hope to gain from the answer. Because it's a strategy here. What you're trying to do is to get good information and be able to utilize that to your benefit. Now, we're going to tackle one question in this segment. It's a big one, and it's a question that you don't always have to ask, and I'll explain why, but I would encourage probably 95% of the people watching this to ask. And that is very simply, could you tell me why the position is open? Now, this probably ought to come somewhere in the middle of the interview toward the end of the interview. It can be a difficult question for the employer to answer, especially if it's something negative. Person's no longer there, maybe they were terminated. You may never know the real truth behind what really happened until you're on the job. But if you ask, could you tell me why the position is open? You're going to get one of probably three answers in different varieties, but either it's a newly created position, which is a good thing. That makes the employer look good, means they're growing. There are some downsides to that as well, though. If it's a newly created position, you as the candidate, as you now look at this new job, it's very, very possible that more than one person has had input and said, you know what, if we ever decide to bring somebody else on board, I'd like them to be able to help me do whatever. And you may have two or three people all with input. And so it's conceivable that this position, while it might report to one person, you may have dotted line responsibility to other departments as well, possibly. So just understand, if it's newly created, it doesn't mean that you're being hired to step in and fill a mold. One of the advantages, too, to it being newly created is that to some degree, you're able to start fresh. And not as though you can write your own job description necessarily, but they're certainly more open to that because they're drawing up a play in the dirt. They've said, we recognize a need that's not being filled right now. We need to address that. If you're the right person for the position, maybe you bring in some additional skills and attributes and can help perhaps even morph this position into something that could even be more appealing to you as a candidate. So again, why is the position open? If it's newly created, there are some pros and there are some cons, but by and large, that's a good answer to get back from the employer. Good for job security too in some ways. Now, if it is newly created and they do have downsizing later, then perhaps you could be one of the first to get cut loose. But you know what? In a challenging economy, nobody is safe when you really get down to it. Very few are safe. So that's probably a good answer in balance if they say it's newly created. The next one deals with, well, the person was promoted. And again, that is also very good. It speaks well to morale. They train and mentor and lead people to be able to move up. And it gives you hope as perhaps a new employee there that, you know what, if I do a good job, I've got some growth potential as well. So a promotion is a good thing. Now, for somebody to be promoted, typically there's got to be some, at least short-term, way to cover the gap that now exists because this person got promoted. I don't know why the person above him or her got promoted or what happened to him, but suffice to say, this job's open due to somebody in the company taking another position. So I might want to ask, how long has this person, had they been in their last position? Gives me an idea whether they've been there a short period, long period. If there's a lot of turnover, it plays into that aspect. But again, by and large, a very good answer. Problem is when they say, well, the person's no longer with our organization. Now, if they were downsized, then that's probably okay because now technically it may not be a newly created position because they had somebody in that job. They just downsized, but now business dictates that we add. Keep in mind, you are the low man on the totem pole in that case, so just understand that you may be the first to get cut loose if that's the case. If the person is no longer there, you don't know whether the company is at fault or if it was the person. You've got to be careful here and not put your political eggs either in that candidate's basket or outside the basket. By this I mean the following. Maybe the guy was great. He did a great job for the organization and left for a very excellent opportunity, left on great terms, no problems. And if you go in there and essentially kind of run this person down or whatever, or insinuate that perhaps they weren't doing the job and they needed to move on, then you're making a mistake. Conversely, if the person didn't do very well in the job, it's unlikely the employer is going to badmouth that individual. So a lot of times you're not really going to know. And so what you need to do is sort of play it down the middle and say things along the lines of, well, I certainly don't know who the person was. I would think if they're like most people, they certainly tried very hard. They had a number of good positive qualities they brought to the table. And like anyone else, no one's perfect. I guess looking back, if there were areas that you could improve or change, what would they be? You ask that follow-up question to get a sense for where the real pain is. What, in a perfect world, if you'd wave a magic wand, what would you like to see in this new hire that you're about to bring on board? So those are some, scenarios that can play off the why is the position open question. And that'll wrap it up for this in our Edge Library series, talking to job hunters about questions that you can ask during the interview and why ask them. I'm Randy Wooden. Thanks for watching.